where do you think the SEC looks to next as they try to take it all, quite frankly?
Well, there are a lot of challenges. The grant of rights, the reason why Oklahoma and Texas are able to leave right now is their grant of rights ends in 2025. The ACC would be the most obvious conference that you would look to because there are a lot of natural rivalries already built in. There are already 4 teams in the SEC that are playing ACC teams on rivalry weekend. You have Kentucky, Louisville, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina, and Florida, Florida State. So you already have 4 naturally built-in rivals. Plus, they kind of share some of the same footprint, so you'd look there. But the ACC grant of rights ends in 2035. That's the longest in all of college sports. So if you're going to add a Clemson or a Florida State, both would make a ton of sense because of the footprint they occupy and the perennial success that they've had, with the exception of Florida State's last few years. They would be the most obvious. You could also look to a Miami, who also is under the ACC, but at the same time, right now, Miami with the 2035, and they would be a little bit of an obscure fit. I don't know if they would be at the top of the list, but they would make some sense. And then I'd look towards Notre Dame. As crazy as that sounds, Notre Dame kind of does its own thing. And granted, yes, they do have a contract with NBC to broadcast their home games 7 or 8 times a year. But that is one that, I could potentially make more money by coming to the SEC. It just geographically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But let's get out of our geographical norms, because I think that's what a lot of people look to. And yet the geographical norms, I think, are going to take a back seat towards improving the brand equity in each and every conference here in the years to come.
Yeah, I agree. Like, when these conferences were first established, travel wasn't as easy and readily available to these programs that it is now. So the geographic location could very well be going out the window. We're talking to Greg McElroy right now, ESPN college football analyst. He's also a former Alabama quarterback, and that's where I want to go next with this. Greg, he's joining us on the Goodyear Hotline. So you host a morning show in Alabama. Obviously, you played at Alabama. You know that fan base very well. And when we talk about the creme of the crop in the SEC, it starts with Alabama. What is the reaction from that fan base as they get set to welcome in Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC at some point?
I think Alabama doesn't really have they don't really have a sense of reality from time to time, meaning they literally think that the Dallas Cowboys could come in and Bama's going to cruise. And that's something. There's something special about that, and there's something really awesome about that because they love their team and they refuse to acknowledge anything else. I think that for the most part, are looking at it like, bring it on, man. Let's go. I mean, this makes us better. Perfect. We get to play Oklahoma and beat Texas every year. That's the way they're looking at it, and I think that they're looking at it more from the opportunity as this being a net positive. However, if you really survey the bigger picture in the SEC, there are a lot of people that are scared, and there's a lot of people that are concerned, because they saw what the Big 12 allowed Texas to do, basically creating their own Longhorn network, being able to kind of set the rules and move the goalposts in a way that would most benefit them. Now, they had the power to do so in the Big 12 because that's what the Big 12 allowed. The Big 12, if you take out, and this is quoting an athletic director in the Big 12, if you take out Oklahoma and Texas from the Big 12, we're the Mountain West. A Big 12 athletic director said that publicly a few years ago. So this is not any secret. The Big 12 allowed Texas to kind of stomp all over the other member institutions. And I think that's kind of the fear of what might happen in the SEC. But I think the voices are far too loud. I think things are spread far more equally in the SEC. And there's better representation because of the success in so many different sports. So I'm not too concerned about it. I think most people view this as a real positive, but I do think some people are scared of Texas's past antics and them coming to fruition again.
Interesting.
Greg, that's really interesting, and it's the first I've heard of that angle. Yeah. Very fascinating. One thing I don't think some of the SEC powerhouses, as it pertains to football, are feeling is a fear that Texas can come in and wreck them on the field. You look at 2010, when you won that national championship as quarterback for Alabama, you knocked off then number 2 Texas to win that national championship. Texas hasn't had that many moments like that in the 11 years since. What does this do for their football brand when they do join this power conference of the SEC?
It's going to be huge. And I remember having long conversations with Tom Herman about this. He was previously Texas' head coach for the last few years prior to them letting him go and bringing in Steve Sarkisian. And what drove Tom Herman more crazy than anything was Texas A&M's recruiting paraphernalia. When Texas A&M would send out a recruiting flyer, the logo of the Southeastern Conference was actually bigger than that of the logo on there from the Texas A&M Aggies. Recruits respond to the pathway and the pipeline that is the SEC and the direct line to the NFL. And as a result, Texas has fallen way behind what was at one point an inferior program in Texas A&M. Texas A&M is no longer inferior. Texas A&M is far superior right now to Texas because of them getting into the SEC, them committing to Jimbo Fisher for $75 million over 10 years, and now they finished number 4 in the country, their highest finish since they won the championship, 80 years ago, whenever it was. So it's pretty remarkable how much the SEC brand has benefited Texas A&M on the recruiting trail and how quickly Texas A&M, a perennial afterthought for so many years, has surpassed Texas as quickly as they have. So it's been pretty remarkable to see the impact of the SEC and just having that logo on A&M's jersey. For me, as a kid from Dallas-Fort Worth, like I said, A&M was not a program that I really thought a whole lot about. To be honest with you, I wanted to be a Texas Longhorn. That was my dream. And then A&M moves to the SEC. When I go back home to South Lake, Texas, I see more Aggie jerseys than ever before. I think there's definitely some type of correlation there. People might say that's conspiracy theory, but the recruits would say otherwise. The SEC matters on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, a really good point there, Greg. Really quick, before I let you go, Paul Feinbaum told us yesterday that he thinks this could happen as early as next year. I know right now 2025 is the year that has been thrown out, but you know how these things go. Sometimes they go quicker. When would you guess that Texas and Oklahoma would join the SEC? And again, I know this is just a guess.
My expectation is 2022, so a year from now.
Okay.
I don't think a lame duck situation benefits the Big 12. Nor do I think it benefits the SEC, knowing that, all right, well, we're kind of in a holding pattern until Texas and Oklahoma join. So I think it's actually mutually beneficial. It would give clarity to the Big 12.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus right now.